If we're being honest, there are definitely some things about being an independent musician that kind of suck. And I'm not saying our purpose or our profession is any harder than any others. At the end of the day, we're making music. That's not too bad. We're not brokering peace deals. But there are some struggles that I think are unique to being an independent musician, or maybe unique to creative arts in general. So today, we're going to get into it. We're going to gripe about it. We will hopefully reach some collective catharsis, and then we'll figure out what the heck we can do to remove these hurdles.
You're listening
to the CD Baby.
CD Baby.
CD Baby.
DIY
Musician
Podcast.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to the DIY Musician Podcast. This is episode 320, I think, where we're going to talk about the 5 hardest things about being an independent musician. And my name's Chris Robley. I'll be the host today, and the co-host is Christina Cano. How's it going?
Hi. Great. How are you?
I'm pretty good. So we have a whole lot to gripe about today.
That's what I do best.
But yeah, is there anything going on in your life and music that is great or is a struggle?
I've just been chugging along, making new tunes, seeing where they're going to land, trying to finish up. I'm trying to get a good solid amount done before February. And then we'll see what's next. I have to keep stuff under wraps, I'm too famous to be telling you
I do know
all of the irons in my fire. You know what I mean?
Didn't you have to sign 2 NDAs in 2022?
I mean, it's like,
that's what you do in LA now.
Hollywood, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, there's not too much. What's about you? What are you making right now?
I'm about to put out an EP sometime in the next month, maybe. But
your marketing has been popping. I've noticed you've started it.
I started again. I finally had some energy for my own music post DIY Musician Conference. Hey, before we get into our topic today, have you had a chance to brag about your feature on the podcast?
No.
Brag.
I don't need to brag. I was on a really cool song. A friend of mine.
I don't need to brag, but I will now.
My friend put on an incredible album. If you haven't heard her, The Last Artful Dodger, amazing, amazing, amazing album, just came out on Interscope, and I was lucky enough to be on a feature on one of the songs. So go check it out. It's called Hits of Today by The Last Artful Dodger.
Heck yeah. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
So I just have 2 quick bits of news before we get into our topic today. One is that CD Baby has partnered with a really cool company called Lalo, which makes it very easy to send out sort of an exciting looking message to your fans about a new release. It makes it easy to hit them up on Instagram and Messenger, DMs, SMS, email, the whole thing with a very simple process. So if you want to check that out, the website is go.lalo.com, LAYLO, and then /CDBaby. Go.lalo.com/CDBaby, and you get 20% off. So check that out. And then the other thing is CD Baby still has our $4.99 distribution discount rolling for a limited time. It might be ending sometime soonish. So if you've got big release plans for next year, you can go ahead and use it now, pay for the submissions at $4.99, and then just complete, sign up the music whenever it's ready.
Heck yeah, get those deals now. One of the great things about the $4.99 too is you can get a bunch of releases and just stack them into your account and then use them whenever you want. There's no expiration date. We get that question a lot. So anytime we have these big sales, go ahead and get the next 5 singles or the next 5 albums. And with the $4.99, it's singles or albums. So if I were you, I would put up get 10 albums ready to go. You know what I mean?
Heck yeah.
And then you'll have those credits. And then if the prices go up, then you're fine.
Yeah. And the reason you and I are on here today, Kevin, is in Portugal at a music conference. So poor Kevin.
We're speaking at a bunch of conferences right now. We have the one that Kevin's at this week. There's one in the UK. We're taking the DIY Musician conference on sort of it's called the tour stop. So we'll share that information later as well. And then we've got a few more coming up. So just stay tuned.
Yeah. Well, so today we're going to talk about the 5 hardest things about being an independent musician. And
5.
Only
five.
Just five. And then you and I were joking earlier about how I said these were unique to creative careers. That is true to some degree, but they're also pretty true of life in general.
Yeah, these are universal.
Yeah,
for sure.
they're like universal to life, but somewhat unique to professional life, I think. But
yeah, I would even say that the distinction is that, like, as artists, there's always this thing in the back of your head that's like, well, I should just give this up to go be a adult grown-up pants with this briefcase, right? And so then there's like this sort of like mental sacrifice you have to make of deciding whether or not your passion is worth all of this grief. And ultimately it is. I mean, like, there's, for most of us, it's really impossible to just quit making music or whatever, but there is sort of this like to the rest of the world, like, oh, you're still doing that, like, is maybe not even happening. Maybe that's not what everyone else is saying, but sometimes that's the projection that we think that they're saying to us. So we sort of have to like compromise, you know?
Yeah.
So that's where I think, while a lot of what we're about to talk about is universal to any job, the arts can often feel like this thing that we have to like overcome that anxiety about.
Well, and then add to that the fact that a lot of artistic endeavors are self-driven, or at least driven by a very small group of people. So it's not the same as working for a company where even if it's your job to worry about finances, you've got a team generally, you know, so it's a little bit more entrepreneurial and sole proprietor like.
Right.
Well, so speaking of finances, the first thing is money is king. It sucks, but it
sure does. Yeah, it is. It sucks. Where do you get it? How do you spend it? You know, like, and especially if you have other jobs, you have other debts, you have a family, you have all these things you have to pay for in your life. And then on top of that, all of these things that cost money just to get your career as a musician off the ground. It's super, super overwhelming.
Yeah. And I think we could all, it's not exactly a money thing, but also sort of connections is like a networking currency or a social currency in a way. And money and connections together still sort of make the world go round. And it's sad to be reminded of that when you feel like you don't have either of them or not enough of either of them. Which I feel like is why we kind of dream of like a label swooping in or a manager swooping in. They're just going to make it easy. They'll give us the money. They'll give us the connections. With the label, not always remembering that they're giving you the money so that you'll be indebted to them. And
I've learned from a lot of friends that have signed to major labels that often the unfortunate thing, and this is just from experience of what, oh, sorry about the siren. Can you hear it?
Yeah.
It's very loud.
It's setting the mood.
Just give it a minute. And scene. Nope, still there. Welcome to LA. One of the things that I found that is pretty unfortunate, but, you know, like you said, we dream about these labels coming in. They're sort of like the fairy godmother. They're going to pay for everything. They're going to make you famous. They're going to blow you up. You're going to be next level. But then the thing is that they also need to make money too. So they're not necessarily even going to be the ones in control of making sure that your project gets finished or that you have like the full, you know, sort of dreamed reality of what a finished product looks like. A lot of times they may not make physical. They may not, you know, like they may just be in charge of making sure that you have like sync placements or whatever. Like they're not necessarily going to be the full realized dream that you want. And those things still cost money. And they may not even pay for all of that. So while we would love a label, ultimately we do end up doing most of the legwork ourselves as independent artists and as signed artists. It just so happens that once you get to a certain level, your money is less stressed about. It's just you have a little bit more so that you can, you know, pay other people to do certain jobs.
Yeah, and I think this sort of hints at a point we'll talk more about later, but like not having the money, not having the connections often leaves a sort of gap in what you envision. Like you want to make this great record, costs money. You want to like put it out in such a way where people actually notice and care, costs money, everything. So you feel like there's all these concessions you have to make and you're not giving it your best because you don't have enough of those two things, which sucks. And then I think also like there's that adage, you have to spend money to make money. Like
Right.
there's like business startup cost. Well, you also will notice when you pay attention enough that, oh, that new famous artist is actually the child of
Oh, yeah.
Goldman Sachs CFO or,
I mean, that
the child of this famous person. You're like, oh, not that
Sure.
they're not talented or deserving in a way, but it's like, oh, that was easier for you because you started with a lot.
Well, that's one of those things that falls in under the category of everywhere in life, not just in music. That's the case, you know. It's really easy to look at anybody who had means or had connections from birth and be like, "Oh, well, they just got this because of that." Yeah, absolutely. And I've had a million of those resentments. But also sometimes those people have tried to, so we can't fully throw them under the bus.
And sometimes they are brilliant. Like one of my favorite songwriters is a grandchild of someone very famous. And I'm like, I'm so glad that his nepotism worked out for him because I love his music so much.
Yeah. But then there's also the truth that sometimes money isn't really the bullet for your career, because you may have the funds and you may have the means and you may find, maybe you win the lottery one day and you have all the money in the world to get that album off the ground and to throw promotion at it and to hire a publicist and all that. And then you find that you've just drained your account. It doesn't do anything. You're not going anywhere because you're not really actually putting in all of the minutia and all of the work to make your career. You know, like you can't just buy your way to success. It doesn't.
That went somewhere different than I thought you were going to say. You could put all the money in the world behind like a mediocre record and you still just suck at the end. Right.
But yeah, so it's all, I mean, there's so many factors. It's like you can't really buy a career. You can in certain circles.
It's like you can buy opening the doors, but you can't buy the end result.
And you can't really buy determination, self-motivations, like what you said. Like you have to be self-driven in art. Like you can't just rest on your laurels. You know, you can't just like put out one great album, hit it big, and then never do anything ever again. So it's like you can maybe use that money to leverage yourself up to a certain position, but then it's still up to you to keep the business going. You know, It's like startup costs, yes, but then how do you keep the business going? Otherwise, you're just, you know.
Yeah. Well, I know in a future episode, you, me, and Kevin will talk about how to break into a scene, which sort of addresses the connections aspect. And you'll probably have a lot to say about that, having kind of moved to Portland, Oregon and done one thing and then moved to LA. But so we could save that for a later time, I guess. But I just wanted to say on the positive side of all this, that there is silver lining or some benefit to having to be scrappy in music. And at this level, like, if you notice, all the cool stuff in music happens at the indie level. Like the way someone decides to use a new social app or, some new innovation in a genre, it's like usually coming underground up to the majors. And so I think there is creative benefit that comes from necessity of being scrappy in making the music, but also in marketing it. And when you find out, if you're lucky enough to find out something that works on a budget, then you're in this amazing position to have like created a winning thing that you can scale once you do have any budget. And then really like any money at all is just like fuel on the fire at that point. So, still takes a lot of work and creativity, but I think there's a benefit to being that scrappy, because also labels just throw money out the window. The way they promote artists and the way they try to like sell stuff, I'm like, oh my God, you are wasting like 90% of your budget right there.
Yeah.
So.
And then there's also, like, you don't want to glorify necessity, right? Like there's people that also just need to feed their families, and it's really challenging to figure out how do I just like, put out an album when I'm just trying to feed my family. But then there's also that thing that they say, like, Coldplay was way cooler before they were rich, that sort of thing. Like, so without glorifying and romanticizing like financial need, it definitely, there's that whole thing. There are some rock stars that really sucked once they got rich.
That little anecdote it's allegorically true and literally true.
No, literally. It's very true.
Well, let's see. The number 2 thing on our list is emotional ick, which I think is just all the shit we carry with us, like competition, doubt, self-doubt,
Seriously.
other people's doubt, jealousy.
You and I have talked about this like at length about sort of the stages of being an indie artist and how there's like that honestly a long time stage that really takes a long time to get over.
It's called your 20s.
Yeah, your 20s and into your early 30s of like envy of other people. That thing where like anybody else who does anything remotely like you near you is clearly they suck, and how dare they? Like, right? Like there's that. Like if there's any other female electronic band leader producer and she's also wearing sequins and she's also got synths in her band.
I sense we're getting really close to reality here in this discussion.
Do you know what I mean? But like it takes a while to get over that. And yeah.
Oh, you said how dare they? And like not only how dare they do something similar to me, but how dare they have what they have? Like why the hell did they have that review in the local weekly? Why are they on that tour on that opening slot? Why do they get to work with this producer? They have all the stuff I want, which is just they have
all the stuff I want. That is just like what it comes down to again.
Which is just a dead end. Like, because I mean, I struggle with that a lot, and it just led to bitterness and burnout. And I had to get my head on straight and come back with like, I hate this term, but like an abundance mindset. You know, I got self-help about it.
Nobody has what you have. Like nobody, it's that there's that saying about comedy that if you try to go on stage and try to be funny, you're not going to be funny, but that who you are, if you are yourself authentically, will naturally just entertain people because there's nobody else out there like you. So I think about that a lot when it comes to music. Like, yeah, sure, you may play the same folk song as someone else, but no matter what, it's never going to sound the same. So you're unique. There is no one else out there that is exactly like you, unless you have a twin who had the exact same life experiences and the exact same voice and the exact same upbringing, and even likely they are unique and different than you. So to compare ourselves is absolutely futile. It's only going to bring you down because it's just like, it's the easiest thing. And with social media and all these things, like stay the F off of it if you're one of those people that's prone to self-comparison.
Yeah, I've been telling people just 5 minutes, set a timer, get off of that. But I get why we feel all this stuff, because I mean, not just because our souls are like out there, you know, this music is just so close to who we are in a way. Like there's that, but then there's also just how hard it is to do all this stuff on your own. And so when you're working so hard to be your own record, you know, whatever, engineer, songwriter, booking agent, everything else, and then you're like, oh, why do they have it? They seemingly didn't work as hard. Like it's sort of a natural thing to feel, so we have to catch ourselves, I guess.
Yeah, we don't know how hard anybody works, and even though some people may make it look really easy, you know, like we don't know how hard they worked. They still had to send the same amount of emails. They still had to book the same amount of shows. They still had to go buy the same gear. Like it's not it's just a futile. Like we don't know anything about their lives. We don't know what personal hurdles they had to overcome to get on stage. You know? Anyway, I think that this one is very close to home because we've all been there and we all compare ourselves. It's just natural. And I feel like it's becoming worse because of these things like social sort of like training us. You know, so as musicians, like it's our duty to just try to be a community rather than like I mean, yes, competition is important in any sort of like business, but not at the risk, not like at the sake of other people's dignity.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Well, in terms of competition, like you and I've talked about this before, but music attention, like yes, people's attention is pretty scarce these days, and we're very distracted. But like attention for music in general is not scarce. It's not this finite resource like where, oh, I can only be a fan of 3 bands. And after that, there's no more in me. Like, you know, so there's enough out there. There's enough audience love to go around. And then I also think you've talked about how like when we go to school, we have teachers. And when we go to the gym, there might be a trainer or something. And like, so it can help to sort of get a accountability team or a friend or a coach or whatever.
Coach. Find your coach, whether that is your friend or a family member or another musician or a bandmate, like finding, and you can even tell that person when they join the band, hey, the reason why I want you in this band isn't just because of your talent, but also because you have a lot of drive and I'd really like to learn from it, and please encourage me or whatever. Like, I think that those are okay conversations to have, because we often look at music as this like very insular sort of like solo experience. Even though we invite other collaborators in, we still want to be like the owner of the path. But the more we open up our community, the more we gain connections, like what we just said we didn't have. But also we earn respect within a community of people that are going to then share that respect exteriorly. So like they will then share their audiences with you, or share their audiences with you.
Yeah. So it's not just when you're talking about community there, it's like, it's not just connections, it's connection. And
exactly.
kind of remembering that relationships are so important. And I mean, honestly, it's like, I probably say this a lot on the podcast, but one of my bigger regrets is not valuing my relationships early enough and sort of being as, sharing praise or whatever, appreciation, all that stuff. So I think that camaraderie you can build with the community can help you get over the icky emotional stuff. And then go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I had a professor in college. I went to school for theater, so it was a lot about like, how to build a career in art. And a lot of it is sort of just relationship building. Not unfortunately, it is relationship building. And one of the things that she said was have relationships with people, not connections. So like to treat people as people, to be interested in everybody, to make sure that when you're building a relationship with someone, even if it's for your career, it's still a genuine relationship. Know about their life a little bit. Give them some of yours. Like if you are just out there to take from people and not offer anything in return, not offer respect, not offer, any sort of community or connection, then people will sniff it out and they'll know that you're just a hustler and they won't really respect you. And they know what you're doing, So like building relationships, but also making it authentic. So that's one thing that I learned that I try to carry, but it's still really easy to go through life and be like, oh, I just need to know that person because then they'll help me know that person. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Yeah. Well, we're all so busy, so that makes us kind of slip into default mode a bit. I just had a few more things to say on this point before we move on. You have often said when discussing this topic, people at every level of success are dealing with these things. Like just because someone is, quote, successful and famous doesn't mean they're not jealous or insecure. I'm like, oh, that's good to remember. It's like
everybody at every level thinks that there's somewhere else they'd rather be, or there's some other caliber that they have yet to reach, and that they have those same exact thoughts like, well, how did they get there? Or like, how come I'm not there by now? I mean, I think it all the time, right? Like I was about to say my age, but I'm my age, and yet like, where am I? I just have this many fans, etc. And it's like, it's so easy to minimize all of the work that you've done, all the progress that you've made as an artist, because you're not, compared to some other artist. One point I was also going to make was that while we can spend our time comparing ourselves in the negative, it's often good to also find people to try to emulate. Like, what are the artists that you do like, and you like the way they maneuver through the world and the way that they lift up their other artists in their community, and try to emulate rather than compare. Like look up and try to reach up towards someone that you admire and aspire to, and maybe even reach out to them. Everybody's reachable.
Yeah, that's a good point. You said something in there about sort of kind of worrying, oh, I'm this far along and I don't have this many fans or whatever,
Right.
Which I think part of what exacerbates that sort of whatever self-doubt or whatever you'd call insecurity is that what we do is so public. You're not going to the office and working on spreadsheets behind the scenes for a company. You are your own face. You're the CEO, you're the president, so you have to have this, like, whatever, like literally your face is out there. And then that brings, like, do I look cool on camera?
Oh,
am I being charismatic on stage? Did I just embarrass myself? It's all that stuff.
Vanity.
Vanity.
is hard. That part. Is that one of ours? Is vanity on there?
No, but we just said it. All right, with the 6 things that suck about being a
Yeah, being like the public face of your business is, and the vulnerable, like, and the talent. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know about you, but there are years that go by where I suck at music. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes it ebbs and flows, dude.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like singing and you're like, wow, my voice has never felt so clear. I sound like a bell. And then there are other days where you go into the mic and it's rough stuff. And sometimes that can last a minute. So, but then there's like the need to keep moving past it and then doing it in such a public way. And like, I think back on certain shows where I just wasn't prepped. I wasn't like, I didn't do my warm-ups. The band wasn't rehearsed and we just like jumped in, and sometimes it was fun, but and it ended up okay and sort of punk rock. And sometimes I'm like, ooh, why did I subject other people to this?
Yeah. Well, now that just reminded me of one other thing. So, like, not only we are these sort of public faces for our own music and art, but you and I have this strange position of being public faces for CD Baby in a way. And that brings this whole other thing where it's like, oh, our you know, I don't want to act woe is me. I love my job. It's a great job. But like, are people judging me because I don't have 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify? And yet I'm educating or I'm representing this company. There's an insecurity around that as well, which is really weird.
Yes, it is there. You and I have talked about this at length because we, you know, this is what we do for a living, and it's also what we do for a passion. And so when you and I are speaking, it's generally coming from passion. And I do often think like, I hope people don't like go and then judge. Yeah, right now, go to @Siren in the Sea on Instagram and follow me and see that I don't really have that. You know what I mean? Like, it's, yeah, I know, but that's if we feel that, and I know that like there are people on so many levels that feel that at every single level, every level. I know people that have. I know somebody who has like, 5 million Instagram followers and like probably 200,000 monthly listeners. And they every day think that they're a failure. And I'm like, dude, like they've like written for a huge artist and blah, blah, blah. But it's really hard. It's really hard to see outside of all of these anxieties. Sometimes, it's sort of like living in a cloud of trying to get past that cloud of the present.
Yeah. Well, just to wrap that one up, I guess my 2, I don't know if the words of wisdom, the things I experienced. One is when I became a parent, my perspective definitely shifted about sort of the relative importance of how my music is received versus just being a good dad and present with my family. So there was a nice sort of forced shift of perspective, which I have felt a lot healthier about music since then. And the other thing I realized, like, anytime I went down a road long enough that it led to a bunch of bitterness, it was the wrong road. And I eventually had to be like, oh, I actually don't want that kind of attention, or I don't really want to make that kind of music, or maybe this isn't the case for me, but maybe I've tried touring and I hate touring. Maybe I should stop touring. Like, you could just be going to the wrong well, basically, is what I'm saying.
That's such a good point. Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Like, just because you had a negative experience on one path doesn't mean that there aren't other paths that may be super rewarding. I love that thought. Yeah, I too have had experiences like touring where they were somewhat sometimes they were negative, sometimes they were incredible, and I would love to be back on the road right now. But but I remember in the negative experiences thinking, I hate this, I never want to do this. Why am I doing this? This is not what I thought it would be. And all these people being like, oh, you're so lucky, you're on the road, you must be having the time of your life. And I felt like a fraud. I was just like, oh yeah, it's great. But then one day, it turned around, and I was like, part of it is perspective and realizing that, like, you know what, you are really lucky to get to do this for a living. Like, you're very lucky to get to pay your rent from music or whatever. Like, there's something shifted, but also travel and looking at the world through a little different of a perspective of like, there's, I'm just going to harp on touring just because I think that that's not all we're talking about, but just like in general with music as well. There's sort of like this monotony where you wake up very, very early. You're very delirious. You're very tired. You get in a bus with the same 4 people. You have to, or a van or whatever. Then you have to go and like, go from city to city to city. And it's just a total blur sometimes. And you get there, finally you get to the green room, or you get to your sound check right on time. You do a sound check, then you sit in a green room for an hour, then you play a show for 1 hour, and then you have to do it all over again. And the monotony in it can be overwhelming. A lot of people are like, this isn't what I signed up for, But when I started thinking about it, like, yes, I'm doing the same thing every day, but there's always something new. Something different is going to happen in each city, and looking for the difference, looking for the good stuff, instead of like focusing on, oh, this is all really boring or whatever. And instead just trying to focus on, okay, that 1 hour a day where I get to go be a musician. I mean, it's all but that 1 hour where I get to perform, and then that like, I'll look for the positive things. I know that sounds like the most cliche freaking anecdote ever. Just focus on the positive, but
No. I'm sort of reliving my weekend because I went to visit my mom in Rhode Island, and she's got Sirius XM in her car radio, and we were listening to like The Bridge and Yacht Rock and all this stuff that she listened to long ago in the 70s, and that Jackson Browne song came on. That's all about the roadies. And do you know that song? Mm-hmm. It's like perfectly captures just the drudgery and the blur of it all, and then there's just that magical moment that it's all for on stage. Such a good song.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's a detour.
So, I mean, and I say that because yes, it's about touring, but it's also about the minutia of every single day of being a musician. There are days, there are weeks, there are years that will go by, and you're like, what did I even do? But ultimately, if you focus on what you did, like, rephrase that question. What did I even do? Like, list it out. Because even if it's, I only wrote 12 songs in 2 years, like, you wrote 12 songs in 2 years. That's incredible. Some people spend their whole life just trying to write one. Yeah. And you're out there working, whether it's once a week or once a month or once a year, whatever, you're putting your focus into a passion. Like, that is so special. There are people that spend their whole lives trying to find a passion.
Yeah.
I actually don't understand those people.
I know. I don't either. I'm like,
I don't get it.
How do you not have 4 different passions? What the hell?
Have you not figured it out?
Well, you have arrived at our next point already, which is the third thing is time itself can be a pain in the ass. And you're saying like 2 years went by and I only wrote 12 songs. What have I done with my life? And so time, I feel like, is this thing that we can think of as an enemy in 2 different ways. One is it's running out. I should have been famous by now. And you had the essay you wrote for one of our emails recently that was like, I thought I would have a yacht by now.
Yeah.
It perfectly captures like, what have I done? And then the other thing is there isn't enough time. So I should have been at a certain mile marker at this point, but also I don't have enough time to get done the stuff that I need in order to become successful, famous. Right. And there's such a rapid pace of change with tech and music trends that like we're also having to spend a huge amount of our time like climbing these learning curves all the time, like new apps, whatever. So time can really feel like something there's never enough of.
And there's also that thing that happens in every generation that where we believe that that the business is just going to the youth, or that like we're getting phased out, and all of that is such BS. And it takes getting to a certain point, I think, in life to recognize that that's BS, that there is no like really, there's no like what are those things called that you turn around? Hourglass that's of your life that's fading and that you're just gonna like melt into oblivion. But yes, time can be a terrifying thing, especially like you said, having children or those sorts of things. There's like these life mile markers that you look at and you're like, well, I need to get a certain amount done by this point or whatever. But like you said, it almost helped you frame the way you looked at time and the way that you valued it and the way that you valued your music and your passion and how you're going to spend that time, right?
Yeah, well, so it's like I had all those. I should have been famous by 21.
Right.
I should have made OK Computer by the time I was 27. That's how old they were. I should have by 33. And all that's doing is preventing me from seeing the ways in which I have succeeded. They just weren't what I
exactly,
slightly off the target I was aiming for, but right dead center of a perfectly great target.
Yeah. I remember even in my earlier 20s looking at artists that I liked and reading their like bios or their books, and in these stories they would talk about how, we didn't even really get famous till we were like 30, and being like, oh, I've got so much time now. Oh my gosh, I've got like so long till then. And then that time comes and you're like, okay, what? That just happened real fast.
Well, I mean, so I guess there is a truth to the sort of youth focused aspect of things. Like, it's not to say that things might not get harder as you grow older, but it's definitely not true that opportunities are close to you. Like, there's audiences out there around the world for all kinds of music. We have more tools now than ever to get our music in front of them. And it's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you may not be like, Britney Spears was like 18 when Baby One More Time came out. And I'm sure that like people didn't want to see like a 40-year-old woman performing the same song. So like maybe you're not going to hit that market that was aimed for.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that you don't have value in the music community, or that, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And
was that a really spicy take? I don't know.
I liked it. No, because particularly when we talk about value of the art itself, I think there's so many examples of people who didn't even really start having, like Mary Gauthier didn't start writing, I think, until her mid-30s. Leonard Cohen had a career as a poet before he ever tried
Sting was a teacher.
Yeah.
Although I don't know, he might have been pretty young when the police took off. But yeah, like we hear all these stories of all these people that had like actual full-blown lives and like, working class lives. Not just like, well, they were a model before they were like, and then they find that their music career takes off finally, years and years and years and years and hard work later.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that, who knows if they would have even been prepared at that if they had struck gold at 17. Then you hear the other side of that, right? Of the kids that like, yeah, or I mean, I know people that have, that did sort of like find a little bit of that blow up earlier on in their careers. And then they're left later down the road, not knowing what to do next, because, sometimes if you get too much of a good thing all at once early on, you don't really know how to like keep the momentum going personally,
Yeah.
It's almost like sorry.
Oh, no, I've heard a lot of people say that the less time they have, the better use they make of it. And so I wonder, it's sort of the person who has all that success when they're young, they don't know what to do with it, maybe to keep it going or to make it grow to the next evolution. And so like, there is another thing of sort of like talking about necessity. Like, if I only have an hour, I got to fill that hour with something that is at least full of effort. Whereas like when you're younger, you're like, I've got a week. What am I going to do? And then the week goes by and you're like, I should have had 80 songs, but I barely have one. Like,
right.
So I don't exactly know what I'm saying, except maybe that intentionality can sometimes make up for just sprawling amounts of time that we no longer have.
I think creating constraints in time is always a really great way to push through any of that feeling of like, well, I have all the time in the world to get there with a project or with any goal, but creating constraints or restrictions with time is often a really easy way to just like sort of push past that by saying, for example, I need to write an album. Okay, well, I'm going to spend an entire week and it's going to be done by the end of the week. Or I'm going, maybe not the final product, but like I'm going to write 20 songs in 12 hours, whatever. Like there are these games, there are these like sort of theories of ways to extract productivity out of time. But I think that when we're speaking of time, we're likely talking more about just like, oh, I just don't have the time for this. I just work an 10-hour job. How am I supposed to find the time or the energy or the will to go sit down on my keyboard and even practice? Like it's also, it comes down to exhaustion. It comes down to all those things. I think during the pandemic, there were a lot of people that were like, well, I got nothing but time now. During that lockdown, distribution sales went up because a lot of people were at home making a ton of music and being like, I got nothing but time, But then the world, we're back at it. We're back at a faster pace. There's more things going on. If anything, there's now even more anxieties out there, and having to combat all of that to make art is hard. So if you're feeling that way, you are not alone. You are in the majority.
Well, and I just had one more thing. You're talking about the pace of the world. There's a lot of things flying by us, and some of them are opportunities. And I think it's good to remind ourselves we don't need to say yes to every opportunity, even the ones that we could and take advantage of. Like, we have to, it's okay to let some things go by and to really focus on the stuff that's most important, because I think artists tend to say yes to too many things.
Absolutely. I remember earlier on in music playing, there was like the first few years, you're sort of like, why can't I book shows? And you're trying to find every creative way to book shows. And then, you start playing shows frequently, and it starts snowballing, and it is what it is. It's just like, once you're in a scene or whatever, like, then people start emailing you rather than you emailing them. And then the next thing you know, you're starting to get like the weirdest requests for performances. And one time this guy asked if I would come play at his house for his teenage daughter's birthday, and he was going to pay me like way more money than I definitely would have made at a venue. But it was like a really weird show, because it was like, it's just for her and her 3 friends, and I'll be there and my buds. And I was like,
supposed to juggle and wear a clown nose too?
I don't know. I was like, this isn't what I want to do. Thank you so much for the opportunity, but no, thank you. And yeah, learning how to say no, thank you is a challenge.
Let's see what's next on. Oh, okay. This is something we sort of hinted at earlier, but the fourth thing I find really hard is the gap between what we envision and the actual execution, the finished thing. So this could be the song doesn't end up as great as I thought it would be when I started writing. The recording isn't as grand as I thought it would be when I started. My marketing efforts, that show I was going to play that was going to like change my career and get everyone's attention. Like, man, it went fine, but it didn't live up. It doesn't live up to what we have in our imagination.
Nothing ever will. When has anything ever looked exactly like you dreamed it up to be? Ever. Think about cooking food. Like, even with food, it's generally like, yes, you can follow the recipe and you can make the exact same thing every single day, but chances are it's going to taste a little different every day, right? Like, there's no like exact science to music. Well, some people would argue that there is. But.
Right. Well, and then when someone comes over for dinner that you've made and you thought you were going to make an amazing meal, and in your mind you failed, you think it's too salty or whatever, the people who are just happy to be there and are hungry eat it. They're like, oh, this is really good. Thank you. And then you're like, wait, I fooled them or something, which the same thing happens with our music. All of our own insecurities, not always, sometimes our music is just bad, but like the things that are unfair that we're holding against ourselves, other people don't even hear. They hear it. It's all new to them. They can't hear that your voice is slightly out of tune on the second half of that syllable. It just sounds human to them. They're like, oh, that sounds great.
Or there's like, I don't know about you, but I've had a few songs that end up on albums that I loved those songs when I was writing them. I was so excited about how they were going to turn out. And then it came to recording time, and like my vision just didn't get realized, but it was mostly my own doing, because I just couldn't quite figure out how to make that vision realized, usually because in my head there was like symphonies and friggin' like whatever. And then budgetarily I was like, well, I can't have a symphony, so what can I have? And then, you try to make compromises, but and I will say that probably on every record there's usually one song where I'm like, this just doesn't sound like a song I like. I just don't like it. And I don't think anyone else is going to like it. They're all going to hate it because they're going to tell I feel insecure about it. And then there are people that are like, oh yeah, that's my favorite song on this record. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
No, I hate it. I hate that song. I hate her.
What do we know? But no,
Yeah.
I have the same thing. It's like sort of ambitions about the arrangement and the sound
Mhm.
quality. So it's like, yeah, I was just using a SM58 for the vocals when I wanted a
Yeah.
Neumann, or I didn't have the string section, all that stuff. But no one else hears that.
Or the vocals just never lived up to what you had in your mind of like the Barbara Streisand huge epic vocals that you were going to sing, and then like you just could never hit it, you know?
Yeah,
So it's
totally.
just yeah, every day.
Well, I did have a few suggestions for people. Not that any of these are easy to do, but one we already said. Remember that by and large, you're the only one who knows what's in that gap because you imagined
Mhm.
it to begin with. So let other people have their valid experiences of your music or of your marketing that you might think is a failure, but really isn't. You can, if you're that sort of insecure, you could try to make up for it with more attention and time, and maybe enlisting teams that can help you make up the difference. But then at the same time, don't get too carried away. Don't be a perfectionist. Don't be one of those people that makes the same record for 12 years because
Right.
that you constantly fill yourself in with new insecurities. So
collaboration is key though in that. It's like, don't let it all live in your head, dude. Like, go find other people to help make it better, and then be accepting of the changes that they're bringing to the table. Be okay with the fact that it's never going to sound like how you first envisioned it, and that, or maybe it'll sound even better. Now other people are the new you didn't even realize the ingredients you needed in this recipe to make it pop, and be okay with the fact that it may go in a different direction.
Yeah.
That like sort of let the flow of the song happen, or of your career, or whatever it is in life that you're trying to accomplish, that you have like the most controlled vision for. It's okay if it doesn't end up exactly like you wanted it to, and be happy with the flow and sort of just, I'm feeling zen right now. And I think it's because I'm on my first cup of coffee.
Which I noticed you spilled before we went live.
You did?
Oh, no, not spilled. You
Oh, right.
before we pressed record.
Took a big sip of it when it was way too hot. So yeah, I'm just this early morning. Christina is a little more like zen, a little more like, just be happy with the flow, my dude.
You have a nice radio mic for that too.
Yeah, I do. This is the Fraser mic.
Last thing I was going to say on that, you talk about like leaning on your team or your collaborators, is if you're working with them for a reason, presumably you are because you liked what they did, you should also lean on their say as kind of the corrective to your own. And so if your producer says, dude, stop trying to take another guitar solo, like you nailed it 10 takes ago.
Yeah.
Just trust him and go with take number 10 or whatever it was. So
yeah, we went to I have some friends that are in the band Bombadil, and they recorded with John Vanderslice. So we went to their studio, and it was amazing because, first of all, I didn't realize everything in John Vanderslice's studio is analog. There was no computers. And I was like, where's the computer monitor? Like, there's no computer monitor. I'd come from electronic recording where it was just like everything's in Ableton or whatever. And seeing like a space that's just completely analog was incredible and really cool to watch how that worked on tape and everything. But his whole thing is 3 takes and that's it. You don't get anything other than 3 takes. You have to nail it in those 3 takes. And if you didn't nail it, then we're moving on. You're never going to. And likely there's something in those 3 takes that we can use. And I was like, that militance of time, but also execution and sort of capturing it, I'm sure it also puts you as the artist in this space of like, there's no time to waste, you know, because you're just like, you have to just keep moving. If it didn't happen, and you came in here rehearsed, hopefully that's part of it. Like, don't come in without having rehearsed your shit, because I don't know about you, but I'm the kind of person that usually likes to go in and is like, I just have like a loose idea of what I'm going to do. And then I just want to explore. And that is like a sound engineer's nightmare. So
yeah, I can get that way for sure.
Yeah. Let's just like explore for like 8 hours on this 1 synth thing.
Yeah. I actually had a producer friend be like, hey, he called it throwing things against the wall, see what sticks. And he's like, you've been throwing things against the wall for 4 hours now. We've got enough. I'm like, all right, moving on.
That's how you spend 3 years working on a record.
Yeah. Well, the last point we wanted to hit, which I think every musician could probably relate to, is can't get no respect. You mentioned it earlier in the episode where the person's like, "Oh, are you still doing that music thing?
Mm,
How's that music thing going?" Like, or just straight up like quit and get a day job. Like,
right.
and you could be like, "I have a day job. I'm still making music too, motherfucker."
Yeah. I mean, dude, seriously. Especially when I mean, on a personal level, it was definitely more when I was like didn't have a day job and I didn't have a traditional day job and I was a touring musician that I was hearing that all the time because yes, you're paying your bills, but really that's all you're doing most of the time unless you're like really hitting it big. Like you're just sort of like paycheck to show to show, really.
Yeah.
Surviving. You're eating green room like
Stale chips.
rider as your 3 of your meals of the week. But all that to say, it's like such a valuable experience and I would never have traded that for the world. But in that moment, there were so many people that were like, why don't you just quit and just like go work at Google or whatever? And I'm like, what?
For those people that sort of put that pressure on, were they, without giving them away, were they friends? Were they acquaintances? Were they family? Like what did they want for you?
Here's what I'll say. Be very careful about who you confide in when you're at your low, because oftentimes if you're confiding in people that are that don't necessarily even have their own sort of way in life, they will often find ways to be like, well, you should probably quit. You know what I mean? Like find people that you trust, that you know have your best interests in hand, that understand what you're going through as an artist and as a person. And yeah, just be careful about who you confide in. For me, it was people that just like didn't necessarily have my best interests in mind. Those sorts of people. Family is always very supportive. They were actually very excited that I was like out there living my life and doing my thing. I got a lot of like, when are you going to settle down and have babies? But I don't know, man.
Yeah. No pressure.
No pressure.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like.
What about you?
Well, honestly, I've never had close family put that on me. Like they've always been pretty accepting to outright just psyched and supportive of my music. But I did get a bit of like, well, have a backup plan. Like go to college, have a degree, like sort of don't put all your eggs in that basket. And, who knows, maybe that was good advice. Maybe it wasn't, I don't know, but I'm happy where I'm at. But I would say it's like, it's almost like the people who say that sort of thing to me the most are like more like acquaintances or people I barely know who like, it's the one thing they know about me that I kept trying to make some music thing. And so I think they maybe are asking it in a way of like, well, it's the only thing I know about them, so I'm just going to go there. Yeah. But it comes across as condescending. It's like, so you still doing music? Yeah, I'm a musician. I'm a songer. I'm going to be doing this till the day I die. Like, yes, I'm still making music.
Do you find that same? It's like completely innocuous and kind questions that often like just hit the wrong nerve. Like, so when's your next thing coming out? That one drives me crazy. Or just like, when are you putting out your next album or your next single or whatever? And it's like, I know that is a very nice, supportive question from you, but it drives me crazy and makes me feel inferior.
You're trying to be nice, but you're just a jerk.
But you're just hitting a nerve.
Yeah, people have very weird shorthand. It's like the other one we talk about is like, oh, you should go on The Voice. I'm like, no, I would lose instantaneously. But I know that
did that all the time.
I know that's you just shorthand for I think you're talented. Like, but yeah.
For me, yeah, my family was always like, you should go on American Idol. And I'm like, at the time, I was like, first of all, that's not the kind of music I like. And then secondly, I don't like singing like that. But in my mind, I'm like, but I also don't have that kind of voice. I'm not that good.
We'd be eliminated in the first round.
Immediately. They'd be like, you need to stop with whatever nasally Disney pop thing you're doing right now.
It's funny, but not.
We've complained a lot, but I think that it's all relatable. I think these are things that everybody often feels in some degree or other, but I think the most important thing is like, don't focus on this stuff so much, know, as hard as that. So fix your attitude.
Just fix your attitude. Well, I think like two quick things on the last point is that music is our passion. So whether we have a day job or not, it's understandable that it's a place where we're going to be putting a ton of time and effort. And some people look at that like, oh, you're doing your music thing, that's selfish or whatever. But they're sitting on the couch watching 4 hours of Netflix a night. Like, that's how they're choosing to spend their time. That's okay. But like, we don't have to be ashamed of striving for something, even if it's not leading to their version of success. And then the other thing I think is like, you don't really have to answer that question. Like, are you still doing that music thing? Or the answer could be like what I said, like, absolutely yes, and always will. So that you kind of just deflect that it needs to mean anything besides it's a journey you'll always be on.
Right.
So they should just go ahead and accept that. And it's not about specific achievements.
Yeah. And just because you don't have anything to show for it this week or year or month or whatever doesn't mean that you haven't been working at it forever. So not to like personally compare, productivity as success of who you are as an artist.
Or you do have things to show for it, just not things that they would recognize as meaningful, but which puts you in a place where they don't deserve to be, have a case made to them about why you're valid. Like, just be like, yeah, I am.
Right.
Next question. But yeah.
You are. You're valid. You're valid, Chris.
Oh, you too. Thank you. There's at least 2 valid people involved in the making of this podcast and many valid listeners.
Many.
Anything else we need to say?
No.
Well, we have no calls or emails today, not because we don't have any, but because Kevin is the keeper of those things. But if you have a call or an email to share any feedback, things you're struggling with, things maybe you did to get over some of these struggles, we'd love to hear from you. So the listener line is 360-524-2209. 360-524-2209, or you can write to podcast@cdbabypodcast.com. And we'll be back when? Let's see. Next week with, I think a talk from Damon Grant, who spoke at our conference all about how to how to find gigs, how to get the gig, how to keep the gig as a side person.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That was a really good chat.
It was. Well, thanks for doing this with me. See you soon.
Thank you, Chris. I'll see you soon.
Good luck with your coffee.
Thanks. Bye.